All right, let's dive into the big ideas from Morgan Housel's brilliant book, The Psychology of Money. And right off the bat, I want you to forget everything you think you know about finance books. Seriously, this is not about charts, it's not about jargon, it's about something way more important and honestly, way more powerful. Our own behavior, our mindset, and the stories we tell ourselves about money. And this quote right here, this is pretty much the core of the entire book. It's a total game changer. What it's saying is that your financial success has very little to do with how smart you are and everything to do with how you act. We're not talking spreadsheets and algorithms. We're talking about psychology. So here's the game plan for how we're going to break this all down. First, we're going to start with what's going on in our own heads. Then we'll look at these invisible forces of wealth, things like luck and risk. After that, we'll talk about what the real goal is. And spoiler, it's freedom. Then we'll get into a simple, unbeatable long-term strategy, and finally, wrap it all up so you can start writing your own money story. All right, section 1, let's start with this huge idea. Have you ever looked at someone's money decision and just thought, what on earth are they doing? That's insane. Well, here's the thing. Housel argues that no one is crazy. Our financial choices are deeply rooted in our own unique personal experiences. So what looks completely irrational to you might make perfect sense to someone else based on their life story. I mean, think about it like this. Imagine one person who grew up in a recession, watching their parents struggle for every penny. To them, money is about survival, and risk is terrifying. Now, picture someone else who grew up during a massive economic boom. They saw people taking big risks and getting rewarded. To them, risk is opportunity. Neither one of them is smarter than the other. They just learned totally different lessons from totally different worlds. And that idea perfectly sets us up for our next section, the invisible forces. Because some of the most powerful factors in building wealth are the things that are hardest to see, the things we don't really like to talk about. Luck, risk, and what true wealth actually looks like. For example, let's talk about Bill Gates. Was he a genius? Absolutely. But he also had a 1 in a million lucky break. His high school had a computer back in the 1960s. Almost no other school in the entire world had one. Now think about his best friend at that school, Kent Evans. He was just as smart, just as passionate. They were going to start a company together. But Kent died in a mountaineering accident before graduation. It's a brutal example of how one life was touched by incredible luck and the other by tragic risk. This brings us to another invisible trap. Housel calls it the man in the car paradox. Think about it. When you see someone driving a Ferrari, you don't think, wow, that driver is so cool. No, you think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool. We buy flashy stuff to get admiration, but all people really admire is the stuff itself. And this is such a crucial distinction. Being rich is about having a high income. It's visible. You can see the fancy car, but wealth is invisible. Wealth is the money you haven't spent. It's the car not bought, the stocks you hold on to. I mean, there's this amazing true story of a janitor named Ronald Reed who quietly built an $8 million fortune. Nobody knew, he didn't look rich, but he was incredibly wealthy. He had freedom. So all of this begs a really big question. What's the whole point of money anyway? If it's not about having more stuff, what is it? The book argues that the real goal, the ultimate prize, isn't accumulation. It's autonomy. It's freedom. But so many people fall into the trap of never enough. The social comparison game is just brutal. Take Rajat Gupta. He was a former CEO worth over $100 million. He had everything, but he wanted to be a billionaire, so he got involved in insider trading and threw it all away. Or think about Bernie Madoff. He already had a wildly successful, legitimate business, but it wasn't enough. He just couldn't stop moving the goalposts, and it ended up destroying countless lives, including his own. So what's the real payoff then? It's this: freedom, the ability to control your own time, the power to wake up in the morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. That is the absolute highest dividend that money pays. It's not about luxury. It's about owning your own calendar. Okay, so how do we actually get this freedom? What's the strategy? Well, the good news is it's surprisingly simple. It has way less to do with complex tactics and way more to do with your temperament. At the end of the day, how you behave is so much more important than how much you know. Take a look at this number, 90%. What do you think that represents? That is the portion of Warren Buffett's entire net worth that he earned after his 65th birthday. That is absolutely staggering.
It shows you the mind-bending power of compounding. His real secret wasn't just being a brilliant investor. It was being a brilliant investor for more than 75 years. Time is your greatest superpower.
And here is another absolutely critical distinction. Getting wealthy and staying wealthy are two completely different skills. Getting wealthy requires taking risks, being optimistic. But staying wealthy? That requires humility. It requires a healthy fear of losing everything you've worked for. Just look at the legendary trader Jesse Livermore. He made a fortune, literally billions in today's money, during the 1929 crash. He mastered getting wealthy, but he couldn't master staying wealthy. He kept making bigger and bigger bets, and he lost it all. And this all boils down to one of my favorite ideas in the whole book. You should aim to be reasonable, not cold and rational. Okay, so a spreadsheet might tell you it's irrational to pay off your mortgage early if the interest rate is only 3%. But if being completely debt-free helps you sleep peacefully at night, then it's the most reasonable and therefore the best plan for you. Because the plan you can actually stick with is always, always better than the perfect one you give up on. Okay, so let's bring all this home. The point of all these ideas isn't to give you some rigid, one-size-fits-all formula. Not at all. It's to give you a set of timeless principles so you can go out and write your own money story, one that actually works for you. So what are those core principles? First, stay humble. Remember, luck and risk are always part of the equation. Next, focus on time in the market, not timing the market. Let compounding do its magic. Third, aim for freedom, not flash. Control over your time is the real goal. Fourth, be consistent. A pretty good plan you can stick to for decades beats a perfect one you abandon after a year. And finally, and maybe most importantly, just focus on survival. Staying in the game long enough for your strategy to pay off is everything. And that really leaves us with this final question. Because these aren't just ideas about finance, are they? They're ideas about life, about what we value, about how we find happiness. Understanding them gives you the tools to define success on your own terms. So knowing all this, what is the story that you want your money to help you write?